remove the masking now, I want to make sure that I can see the lights and darks now. And a lot of this masking is going to need to be smoothed out with a scrubber brush, because the problem with masking is it becomes so stark in your painting. So we will do some of the smoothing out first before we do the darks. And one of the things that you have to be sure of when you're scrubbing out is that your scrub brushes are clean. Let me just see if I can find a cleaner piece of paper. Oh, this one will do, I guess. What I find is they tend to keep the paint in. And so it's always a good idea to just, that one had a kind of a red tinge to it. This one looks pretty clean. A more delicate scrub brush. I have this very cheap Simply Simmons Filbert, and I'm going to start with that one at the back, and I'm just going in from the outside and just softening out, and then I'm frequently going into my very clean water and just softening as I go. So especially in the background here, I don't really want these to show up too bright. So I'm being very careful to remove less paint around it. The angle of your brush is pretty important too. So that one we might need to cover a bit with some other color. Cleaning the brush. And this does take some time, so you have to be patient. The other thing to be conscious of here is as the paper is damp around it, it starts to make these little lines and kind of a hard edge on the outside. So I'm just taking a completely dry brush and I'm just covering that part, or just rubbing gently over that part so that I don't get these hard lines that come around whatever I'm working on. So I'm just going to keep working on this, and then I'll come back to the video after I've completed that, and we can talk about next steps. I've decided not to scrape out, actually I need to do that spot, but not to scrape out where these rocks are, because I think it's better to have them with hard edges, and since they're closer to us anyway. So that is the way we're going to tackle those. The other thing that works well, I'm not sure if you can see this, maybe I'll just move it closer to the camera for a second, is notice on a few of these, the white remains, but only in a small spot. That works best for the masking. If it's a very large spot, it's going to have some difficulty looking natural. I've mixed up my colors again, so the same combination we had before. I don't need as much purple, and I've got some burnt sienna, I've got lots of ultramarine, and a bit of neutral tint. So that should probably work. The other thing I'm going to do differently this time is I'm just going to wet around the sun, or I keep calling it the sun, the moon, this time, so that when we go over that, it no longer has masking on it, for one. And when we go close to that, it's not going to have a hard edge. So that is the strategy that we have so far. I'm going to start with my neutral tint. Hopefully I've got enough of that. I'll just soften out this edge here as I go with some ultramarine. Okay, and as it gets close to the horizon, so I did not wet the paper first, then, but I am putting more paint on my brush this time. And as it gets close to the horizon, I'm just gonna have it a little bit lighter there. And hopefully this will fix our problem that we're having with the paint seeming to go on a little bit inconsistently. As I hit this spot where it's been wet before, it should work a bit better. And then I'm going to just go around with a clean brush once more where we did that. So I've wiped off my brush. I'm going around and kind of trying to smooth that out a little bit. And then I'm going to wet down the bottom part. And this is where I'm going to apply just the purple. Okay, I might scrape out a little bit of light here, just with the brush. Yeah, just like that. I just want them, doesn't seem to have made a huge amount of difference, but we do have to cover this masking. So we're just going to do that. And then it's not as prevalent in the background. It's okay. And then the masking gets darker as you go to the front of the painting. And then over here is where we wanted to make this foreground a bit darker. Now, I originally put cobalt in there, but this time I'm going to put some ultramarine just along the bottom, like so. Add a bit more water. Okay, and then maybe a tiny bit of cobalt as well. And that just helps make this part a little bit darker, which I think it needed. A bit more ultramarine, maybe a tad neutral tint, especially on this side where we're going to have a tree anyway. So there we go. Okay, and it is looking quite dark. Hopefully we have some less of the issues. I think part of this might have been the paper too. I really am getting some weird effects on this paper. Maybe it had something on it, who knows? Or it could just be operator error. So there we go, we let that dry again. The only other thing you can do at this point that might be helpful is to take your flat brush, make sure it's clean. And remember when we went down here and we just scraped out some of this paint? Since we have so many layers on here, we're not really scraping it out very well, but that should help a bit. Okay, so I've mixed up my paint color. I'm hoping I'm going to have enough here. The most important thing to consider when you're doing this is your edges. So these outside edges need to look kind of like pine trees, but also they need to have plenty of spaces in them. So sometimes it's better to go down all the way to where you need to go. And then backfill it where you don't need as much air coming through, if you like. So, and all these little gaps are extremely important. The other thing is you want to leave the parts that you like and cover the parts that you don't like. So that is what we're trying to accomplish here. Faster the better, because you don't want to get too technical. You just want to get the paint on there. And then because it's a dark, variation in color is important here. Really don't want too many gaps or open spaces and here I'm just kind of replicating what the roughness of the pine leaves or whatever tree that is here. And then I'm going to throw in some of the colors that we've been using. Pretty strong mixtures though, so that it creates some color in the dark, which is something that is good to have as well. So I threw some purple in. I'm going to throw in some ultramarine. And look at this little gaps she made and decide whether you like them or not. And it's okay if there's some darker ones in the background. And then while it's still wet, we're just going to put in branches. It's better to use a skinny brush for this. Grab a skinny brush. Maybe I can get some paint on it. So these branches should be coming up through in a variety of places. branches towards the top of the painting go up. And that's probably enough. It's a very symmetrical looking tree. It doesn't have any odd parts to it, which is generally what you want to do, is try and make some weird shapes somewhere so it looks more natural. Trying to see where to do that. Maybe here. So I'm just jiggling my brush a lot. That's basically what I'm doing. Okay, so that's good enough. Now we're going to mix another puddle for our main tree. In a second here. So there's my mixture. I'm adding some of this burnt sienna. This is my neutral tint and indigo. And it is a skinny tree, so it doesn't need a huge amount of paint. It doesn't have to replicate it exactly. But even though this tree is far away, this is the tree that's going to be more in focus. So I've got my skinny brush. I might change brushes, but right at the top, I'm going to be using my skinny brush. And again, I'm trying to leave gaps so that there is spaces in between. And I'm trying to get close to the moon. If there's spots I didn't like on the moon, here's my opportunity to cover them up. Okay, and then this here is very good opportunity to cover up some of the things that you did here that you might not have liked. And that's a series of shapes that kind of go up like that. So we'll do a few more there. And make sure you leave those gaps. And then over here, we have another series of shapes that kind of goes like this. We'll have one hanging down here, which maybe will go into this part here. So that doesn't show up as much. And then before you leave this section, make sure that you put your branches in. So basically we're doing a section at a time. And this way we can make sure that it's hitting the wet paint. And that helps connect the branches. This one is kind of coming off of here. And then you can have some odd ones that are just, oops. If it didn't work out to be a branch, it becomes a group of leaves. Okay, I'm not sure I like this part here, so I'm going to cover that. Okay, and I'm looking at it thinking it could go darker, so I'm just going to mix a slightly darker mix, so that's really thick. And put that darker mix in as well. It helps give it dimension, because some of the ones that are less dark might look like they're more in the background. I'm going to cover that part too. Didn't really like that, and it looks like in the picture that's pretty much covered. Okay, so we're working our way down. There is some beautiful branches coming across, so I'm going to do these ones first. And the trunk is coming down like this. This part here I'm not sure I like, so I'm going to join that. Okay, and then we have another branch This brush has a tendency to separate. And don't forget to cross your branches. If they're all just going out on their own into air and none of them are crisscrossed, it doesn't look that natural. So that's the other thing you can do here. Make this one a bit thicker if I can get my brush to cooperate. Okay. And then I have a few off of here. Okay, that's probably good enough. I'm going to continue down my trunk again. My brush is getting kind of dry, so I'm just going to wet it and mix that thick mixture again too while I'm there. Okay, so back to it. There's a nice grouping coming off of here, and it kind of wraps around, which sometimes with pine trees that's what happens. It's actually wrapping around the back. And then I have some more branches. I might have lost track of where I was, but it's probably not that relevant. This needs to be thicker. And then I need to do my trunk further down. And don't have every, I'm gonna make this curve over a bit more. I just decided. Don't have every set of branches evenly spaced, like, you know, if you keep going down the trunk like this. There should be some randomness. So have it close to the other one when you think about it. I love also how the tree branches reach way out. Sometimes there's nothing, and then all of a sudden, right in the middle of the air, there's a branch. And we can have this join like that. If we don't like it, we can cover part of it. Let's cover part of it there. Okay. And over here, I think I might just extend this one a little bit this way. Okay. Keep moving down. Now we have a lot more branches in this area. Okay. Oh, I see. This is this, this needs to be thicker. It goes like this. And another one that goes like that. Okay, so this kind of has a curve here, which I liked. So we're gonna let that do its thing. Okay, don't forget your spaces. And this one, I think I'm just gonna leave for a minute. Work on this one, which you don't really see. It is kind of blocking, and I'm gonna try to cover that masking that I put there because I did not like it. Okay. And the question is this all in front of the rock? Yes, it is. So we can cover any masking that we didn't like. Okay. Continue down. Now the tree is getting thicker as we continue down. And I think we might have to put some here, just because it's looking a little bare there, I think. And I'm going to do this wrap around again. Okay, not bad. I'm going in with my dark over here. Dark. Trying to avoid those spaces. I might have this go up. Okay, dark needs to go in here, and I can put another thing coming out there. Okay, so now we have a nice thing coming down here, but I'm running out of paint again, so I'm just gonna do my combination. Yeah, and this is really what it goes down in this direction. Okay, and it's quite thick. So in other words, it's wide because this is a bigger part of the tree. Leave a nice hole so you can see through it. Some more holes down here. Okay, and there's lots of holes out in this area too. Yeah, and they don't all need to connect. You can just randomly put dots in different spots. I forgot to do that. Throw a few dots here and there. It just helps add to it. Okay, and then there appears to be another one down there as well. So I don't know where this tree stops exactly. I think it ends up, what we're going to do is we're going to have it stop behind this rock. We probably got a bit too wide there, but we're too skinny up here, so that's okay. Okay, it's probably overall, it's probably too skinny. Probably should have increased the size around here. What to think about that? Oh, that's all right. Okay, so we can always, if we don't like the trunk size, we can always add some more leaves to it, or needles in our case. Okay, and I realized I didn't put enough darks in here, and I did not put any branches coming down. A few of them look like branches, so that's, we can go with that. Okay. Lost my picture. Okay. We need more darks in here. Let's get some dark. Especially right against the trunk, this would be pretty dark. Same thing, we want some things sticking out. Look at these gaps and look at the shape of them. Make sure they're random enough. Like I love what that did there, but you want some more of that maybe down here. Okay, so should we put something on this side of the tree? I think we just kind of finish off this. We don't have too much on this side. There's a big space there, but I don't mind that. Yeah, I noticed there's some masking there that never came off. So that will be a problem in the end, but now we have to wait for it to dry. Okay, that's all we'll do for now. We can fix that up later on. And I decided something should reach up here too. So it almost frames this moon. Put thicker paint. Okay, good enough. All right, I realized that I did not darken the hill that the tree is on. And to do that after the fact is a bit tricky. You definitely do not want to do it where we just painted. But I'm thinking what I might be able to get away with is to just darken it in steps. So we're going to try that. Let's just wet it first here. I'll leave a little gap, and this is where it's all darkened. And it's pretty dark right here. This is the actual rock, whereas in front of it is snow. So I'm just going to go up the rock, add water here and there, vary my colors. And it's a good idea to go in the direction of the rock so that it makes sense. I'm covering up a bit of my masking here. Okay, and then I'm going in with a just straight neutral tint, and I'm trying to define some lines in here that represent the way the rock would be shaped. Maybe it's very dark in this part here, whatever's happening there. And here, I just want to go back to the original blue I just put down there. See if I can meet this tree. I can probably paint right over the tree, actually, come to think of it. And then maybe a bit of indigo. Okay. I'm just wiggling my brush around to see that if I can get some interesting shapes. So all I want to do here is create interesting shapes. Okay, so I think that might do. And then I'm going to try to do the same under this part, because this is quite dark as well. So I'm just going to wet it. There's a bunch of rocks down there, but it's particularly dark right there. So we're going to start with the neutral tint there. So this shape here, we created with the masking. And then these are rocks. So again, I'm just going to use some water. I think maybe some ultramarine in there as well. And I can probably cover this masking for the most part. Because if you look at it, it's not really that white. And then here I want to be careful as I go into the tree. And there's this dip here in the rock. It's almost like the paint was wiped out, which is what we'll do. Clean my brush, dry it off, scrape it out. I could even go in with a flat brush and try to do the same. Okay, so it looks like there's a bit of light on the top there. And then these are really quite dark. So I'm not pre-wetting this part, I'm just going in. Okay. Yeah, this is very dark in this area. So I'm starting with my ultramarine, but I'll probably put neutral tint in there too. Yeah, it looks like there's some rocks here that got highlighted. So I'll do some rock shapes here. And continue on with that. Over this part, watch where I put my hands. Yeah, it looks like that almost blends in with the rock. Okay, so does it look like a rock? A little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. Sometimes it helps to just put some calligraphic marks, as they call them, into here. Different colors. Just don't even think about it. Just put a shape in. And sooner or later it'll start resembling a rock. This we could have a harder edge on there. And maybe a little dark spot in the middle of that. Okay. Okay, maybe darker up here too. You can always use a dry brush effect, which I just did. Old brush that you have. I have this one, which is again a Simply Simon's oval wash, and the other trick is not to use too much paint or too much wet paint. So if I use this one, I get a pretty good dry brush effect on this paper. And where I'm thinking the dry brush might be nice is in these areas here where, you know, we've got all this masking. So I'm going to try something. I'm just going to take this brush and I'm going to go through this area with the brush, and it's very dry. Okay. It's kind of doing it and kind of not. So now I'm back to the manual way of doing it. So it's like it's catching a bit of light. So I'm trying to retain some of these white dots and looking in between them. And we might end up having to use white paint in this area if this doesn't really work. I was not recording for the final part, so I'll just walk you through what we did at the end. So once we finished the tree and this spot here where the water was sort of glistening, we went through and put the all 3 color mixture. So the burnt sienna, the ultramarine, the imperial purple, and maybe some indigo or neutral tint. And that was our darkest darks, and we applied that under the rocks. When we got to these rocks out here, there was a bit more blue in the mix, so slightly lighter, where these were slightly darker. And then we applied the dark under these rocks. And then what we did is we scraped out once again just at the top. We put some ultramarine underneath just to make a highlight of this. I guess this is the snow being blown this way off the lake. You can put in a tree shadow if you like. My advice for a tree shadow is to just wet the paper where you want your shadow to be first, and then paint in your shadow. Again, with a lighter 3 combination, but a lighter mixture. Your shadow is always darker right next to the tree. Or you can leave the shadow out. I kind of liked it with it out as well. And then this is just sticks and looks a bit like sumac that's pulling up around here. Whatever number of sticks and so on you want to put there. It does help with the foreground. You could even put some over here in front of the tree if you know you need something in front of that tree or in this corner. And that is it. You would just stand back and take a look and see if there's any areas where you think that needs some correction. The only area where I think I need a little bit of correction is back in here, where this ultramarine blue is really coming across as too bright for that background. So I'm just going to dump some neutral tint in there, or raw sienna or burnt sienna very lightly, so that it can just keep pushing that back a bit further. So on my palette, I still have my raw sienna mixture. So let's give that a shot and see if that helps take the blueness out of this background part. And because I just wet it a little bit, and I didn't wet the paper beforehand, what I'm going to do is just dab the top of it. It looks a bit dark now, but it will dry a bit lighter than that. And you could even just make sure your horizon line is straight. And you can even dab a little bit out of there. It might take the burnt sienna out though, so let's try that a bit more. Maybe I'll go with a bit of, the other option here is something like yellow ochre, because it's going to be a bit lighter. And it will take down that ultramarine just a little bit. So looking at it, let's see, I see that. The other thing I see is this has kind of got a blob in front of it, the tree. I think what I was trying to do is I was trying to make some of these branches go in front of the tree. But that didn't really work that well. So I'm just gonna take a little bit of that paint off there because my eye is attracted to that. And that is taken off. And I think that's about it. I'm kind of tempted to put something in front of this tree because this part of the painting doesn't quite look the way I would want it to. But the other thing to do before that is to take a mat and just see if by positioning the mat you might be able to cut off some things. It depends on the size of your mat, of course. But if you can remove that corner by having a smaller mat, maybe that's a better fit, who knows? And the other question is maybe these should come up. Those are just some final questions. Usually what I do is I let the painting sit there in my studio so that I can look at it for a few days and decide really what does it need. So thanks very much for joining. Hope you enjoyed this one.